is a beautiful 75-degree day in Southern California. The crowd filing into the Forum in Inglewood.
Inside the Forum at the corner of Manchester and Prairie.
Whether you're kicked back in the lounge or grinding in the film room, the block is always hot for the Lakers.
The Los Angeles Lakers are the world champions of basketball.
It's the Great Western Forum.
Oh, chased down by James. Blocked by LeBron.
The Magic, he pivots, a 360 turn. He's around one, he's around two. Magic to Green underneath.
On the ball to Shaq, screen.
A windmill. They're going crazy at the Fabulous Forum.
Hosted by Anthony Irwin, Pete Zayas, and Jovan Buha.
It's showtime.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, into the Great Western Forum. I'm Anthony Irwin, your host for these fun episodes that, we had promised we're going to run once a month, but life happened for the three of us. So we're on episode number 2 as we get ready for Media Day right around the corner. I am joined, as always, for the first half of this one by Pete Zayas of Laker Film Room Pod and Jovan Buha of Buha's Block. The first half of this thing, as we did last time, it's going to be the three of us kind of talking about storylines that we're paying attention to heading into training camp. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to open up the panel to two guests that I'm really excited. Well, three guests, I guess, that I'm really excited about. Two and Harrison. But Darius Soriano, co-host with Pete Zayas, is going to be joining us. And Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation is going to be joining us for that second half of the show as well. So loaded episode, and also Harrison. Pete, Jovan, we're here.
We made
Rob and JJ talk tomorrow, and Media Day is on Monday, and training camp is right after that. Pete, how you holding up?
This has felt like an unusually long offseason. I know we got eliminated, on April 30th? So it's almost going to be exactly 5 months from the time of the last Laker game at the very least. But I don't know. I went into the offseason with fairly low expectations or hopes for this year. And it's kind of like, it's going to be a gap year. Then they get Ayton, they get Smart, lose DFS, of course, which is definitely going to matter. But I thought they did well enough this offseason that it got me to that fan place of like, okay, when do we start? When do we start the season? I can't wait. And so I don't know about you, Jovan, but this has felt like one of the longer off seasons for me in a while.
Yeah, we're here. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I mean, that intro got me going. I forgot about how sick that intro is. So yeah, I'm excited. Like it feels like the day before Christmas, right? We're at Christmas Eve right now with the season unofficially kicking off on Thursday with the Rob JJ presser, and then again on Monday with Media Day officially. But yeah, it's been a long off season. It's been also an off season of some changes. So I've been doing this now all off season and focusing on that. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Raj and I recorded an episode yesterday. Jovan, I listened to your show with Trevor that you guys recorded the other day as well. And it has me thinking this is the most excited I've been heading into a Lakers season since the year after they won that championship. Heading into, that year they had kind of reconfigured a championship level roster. And I was thinking, oh man, Marc Gasol makes a whole bunch of sense. We'll see what Dennis Schroeder can possibly be, all that stuff. And this season, it's like we get a whole year of Luka, a Luka who is doing the rounds to tell everybody about, all of the changes he has made physically and mentally and emotionally and stuff like that. So that's really exciting. We're getting LeBron James, right, who I think can feel kind of spited for the first time in his career by the collective league. So that's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. And we have JJ Redick heading into the second year of his career. Normally a season where people heading into their second years make significant improvements as well. And if we see that from him, that will really help the Lakers. So fascinating stuff to keep in mind as we head into Media Day and Rob and JJ's presser, and that's kind of where I'm going to set this thing up. And Jovan, I'll start with you heading into the training camp and media day and all of that stuff, what would you say that the number one thing that you're kind of keeping an eye on through training camp, through preseason games, and so on and so forth?
I'm most interested in the starting lineup and the fifth starter. And I have a strong opinion on this. I just did a video last week breaking down, I think, some facts about the starting lineup, what we know, the very limited parts of it that we know, and then breaking down why I think it should be a certain way and why there's a clear choice, despite a lot of people clamoring for a lot of different versions of a starting lineup. I think there's been a lot of discourse out there about that. So I think that's the thing I'm most interested in, and seeing if we get some clarity from JJ with that. JJ's not done any really availability all summer. So there had been, remember, he right before last season, he did the interview with Zach Lowe where he announced the starting lineup and came out and said, we're going to start Rui, we're going to start Austin, we're going to start D'Lo. And he learned from the sins of the prior coaching staff. And this time we don't know, is Rui going to continue to start? Is Marcus Smart going to replace him? And what's the plan with Austin? And so I think that there's a lot of question marks for me with the starting group that then bleed into the rest of the team and just how they want to construct the offense, how they want to construct the defense. And so I think, to me, setting the tone with the starters is going to be a big thing in terms of the rotation and just the style of basketball on both ends of the floor. Can you give us your argument for who that fifth starter is? Yeah, so I will condense it into, I'll try to keep it under a minute. I think... So I think there are really four starting locks, which to me are Luka, LeBron, Austin, and DeAndre Ayton. I think some people will quibble with Austin. I see it all the time on my lives and in the comment section. But to me, it just comes down to Austin is clearly the third best player on the team. And from a skill, talent, and production standpoint, I don't think the Lakers have the depth or the perimeter two-way play to bring Austin off the bench. There's no Danny Green, there's no KCP, there's no Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins on this team to kind of make that argument of, okay, bring Austin off the bench, make him a six man. I also think as a guy in a contract year, you're potentially isolating him and sort of icing him out in a year that's going to be pretty big in terms of determining if he fits with Luka and what that looks like long term. So I think Austin is going to be in the starting group. To me, it comes down to Rui versus Marcus Smart. And looking at the construction of that starting group, you have DeAndre Ayton, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic, who are all front court defenders. So if I'm trying to build out a starting group, I need at least two guys who can defend backcourt players. And I would actually argue that Marcus Smart has shifted more toward being like a wing defender or even guarding some forwards more full time. But I still think comparatively to Rui, he is a much better perimeter defender and backcourt defender. So to me, I would have Marcus Smart as the fifth guy. You have him defend the best 1 through 3 player, even 1 through 4, depending on who the 4 is. Then Austin is the secondary backcourt guy. LeBron is the secondary front court guy. Luka is hiding as a helper on the non-threat, whether that's a backcourt player or front court player, and then DeAndre Ayton's defending center. So I think if you're arguing for the OG starting lineup, basically from last year, which is Ayton replacing Hayes, I don't think they have enough perimeter defense, and I don't think they have enough backcourt defense. If you're replacing Austin with Rui, I think it's the same issue. You just have Marcus Smart in there for Austin. So to me, there's a clear choice of, I think it's those 4 plus Marcus. And Vando's the other one that I've seen a lot of people say, but my thing with Vando is I just don't think JJ views him as more than a 2-shift player. I've made the case that he only played more than 20 minutes 6 times last season. In all 6 of those games, at least one front court starter was out, if not multiple. So JJ showed that he views Vando as like an 8th or 9th man. He's not going to start him.
Yeah. Pete, do you think this is a situation where, because I agree wholeheartedly with what Jovan was saying there, as far as like who should start, I'm on team start Smart and for all the reasons that Jovan outlined, but on top of it, he's going to guard the other team's best player, and if he isn't in for that first shift, that's a significant chunk of that player's time that he isn't guarding him. But also, I think it has an impact on Austin Reaves' game. We saw the difference between how Austin played when D'Lo was starting next to him and he had to guard the other team's best player versus when they swapped out D'Lo for Max Christie. And I thought we saw a much better, more efficient and effective Austin Reaves. So you have that to consider as well. But Rui was also really good for the Lakers last year. He has the seniority, I guess, for lack of a better term, having been on the Lakers and for longer than Marcus Smart. And they're he hasn't done anything to be quote unquote demoted. So do you think there's a delineation to make here between what maybe should happen and what will, and how the coaches might view this?
Yeah, although I pretty strongly agree with Jovan's argument with that. Just Rui just does such a different job than Smart that it limits what you can do defensively overall with that starting group, which is going to play really at least 12 minutes a game. That's going to be your highest minute group. And if you have Rui starting with that group instead, you probably go off into the peel off switch type of defense that the Lakers ran a lot post AD last year, that we saw some of the limitations of that in the playoffs. And one of I think the league wide storylines in the playoffs was how much, especially the better teams, were switching their defensive coverages within the same game. And really, you've only got one card to play with that 5-man group. You can maybe come up with a zone here and there, but the point is that you have to kind of come up with junk defenses to get by that I think has a ceiling as well. And even to Jovan's point, Smart is more of a I've been guarding up type of guy the last couple of years, that you could argue even with Smart in the fold that they might need another guard type of defender. Jovan,
I would agree with that. And ideally, I think the starting lineup has that second defender in there, and it does look different. And that's ultimately I think a longer term question of just the roster construction and how they want to build the team around Luka moving forward. And a fun fact with talking about Smart and who he's defended, the players he's defended most, the 3 players over the past 2 years are Luka Doncic, Lauri Markkanen, and LeBron James. And looking at that, so those are all 3 guys 6'7" and above,
he's
all big ball handlers. It will be fun for scrimmages, but all big ball handlers, and that shows you. So he can be the point of attack guy, I guess, against a team's primary ball handler. But those guys have tended to be bigger, and he's just going through his film over the last couple of years. He rarely was defending the De'Aaron Fox speedster point guard types. He was often, now part of that was I think the way that Memphis was using him, because he was on a lot of lineups next to Desmond Bane and John Morant. So by nature, he kind of had to guard up a bit there. And then Washington was just a lottery team who was unserious. But it's Washington. But I think so. Part of it's it's hard to separate that from how much of it was a roster construction, lineup construction type thing where they needed to use him as a guy guarding up. But I do think that's telling that he has often been against 3s and 4s more so, I would argue, ball handling 3s and 4s, but still that's different than saying put him on a De'Aaron Fox or even a Devin Booker type. I think he is probably better guarding up than down right now.
So how does Rui fit in best within this framework? Because the same arguments about it's a contract year, that's true of all of them. It's contract year for Smart, Rui, Austin, all of these guys, that there is a thought that I think is back. I push back against it a little bit, but that Rui is better as a starter than he is coming off of the bench. I agree with your framework. I agree with this point, but I do want to kind of push on it a little bit. Rui's going to be a big minute player even within that. How do you get the most out of him in this type of setup that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it comes down to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say the narrative about Rui really quickly isn't even about how good he is or what. It's about his energy level. It's about how engaged he is when he comes off of the bench. So it's not that it puts him in tougher spots, because I actually think he's an ideal bench scorer where he can be kind of a safety valve and he can have a little bit more time on the basketball than he does, say, with the starters. So I think there's a role there for him. But yeah, there is a bit of a concern, contract year, all of that same stuff that we talked about with Austin, as we did with Rui. I would say the one thing to take note of between the two of those guys is the Lakers offered Austin an extension, and at no point did they have a conversation with Rui about an extension. So I don't think they're as concerned about the long-term fit with Rui there. But yeah, Jovan, what would you say about, how to utilize and how to maximize a very important player in Rui coming off of the bench?
A couple things with this. So one, I think Rui is a better player than Marcus Smart currently. I think based on at least how last season went, but really the last couple of seasons, I think Rui has been a better and more productive player than Marcus Smart and more of a winning player than Marcus Smart. Now, again, we're talking about defensive roles here, so it's just again, I think there's way more duplication in just overlap with Rui and Luka and LeBron defensively than Rui and Marcus Smart defensively. So I think this is more about a role fit than anything with the starting group. And like offensively, I think the Rui fit is much better because he is more of an off-ball player. Marcus Smart has been a guy who has been more of an on-ball player, and I think what one of my things that I continue to say whenever I talk about Marcus Smart is I think he's going to drive fans crazy with his shot selection. This is a guy who will take pull-up threes in transition. He will look off LeBron and Luka. He was looking off Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in Eastern Conference Finals games. Like this is a guy who does not care who's on the floor. He's an irrational confidence guy who like will take big shots, and sometimes he'll make them, but I think more often than not, honestly, probably miss. But again, so I think this is more of a role thing. With Rui, though, I will note that like I've been in the locker room and on the road and had conversations with various people about this. Like Rui likes to start. Rui prefers to start, and the Lakers have felt that you look at the splits and just in knowing Rui's temperament, Rui tends to perform better as a starter and someone who's playing more. So I think that is something that you have to weigh. At the same time, I think the peak version of this team likely features a reinvigorated Marcus Smart who's defending like the Boston level of Marcus Smart. And to get that player, you maybe have to start him. Like I think Marcus Smart is a guy who's also accustomed to starting and expects a certain role. So in terms of Rui maximizing him, I think you make him the sixth man. I think you stagger him and LeBron, and that eliminates some of that overlap and duplication. And you make sure you're running certain actions and sets to get Rui involved. And whether that's him punishing a mismatch or whether that's him, pick and pop. We saw a lot of pick and pop with him and Luka. I think that's something you can go to with certain second unit groups. Like you still play him 26, 28, 30 plus minutes a night. And potentially he closes in some matchups, depending on the opponent. But I think if you feature him and run more plays a play every couple of minutes for him, I think that's where you kind of dangle the carrot of like, hey, you're actually going to put up similar numbers, maybe even better numbers coming off the bench. But this is just what's best for the team in how we construct our defense.
Yeah, I'm the other part of this too that I'm really kind of curious about. And this might be a separate topic for another day, but I've thought a lot, Pete, about how many expiring contracts that the Lakers have and how many prove-it deals that the Lakers have. And for a second-year coach in JJ Redick to kind of juggle all of that at the same time, we've already talked about Austin. We've already talked about Rui. DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, both on prove-it deals. Maxi Kleber, Gabe Vincent, they're playing to continue to prove that they belong in the NBA. Are you at all concerned about how many prove-it deals there are here?
Yes, I am. I do think that there's going to be, Jovan was just saying, I've talked to Rui. Rui prefers to start. And what player doesn't? I mean, some guys like to come off of the bench, but vast majority of guys would prefer to start and catch that rhythm. That's what they've been doing all of their lives. And so they've got 6 guys that are, I think, have a legit case to start. They've got several others, like you said, that are at the very least would want to roll and the ability to show that, hey, I deserve another contract and not just at the vet minimum. That is absolutely going to be one of the things that Redick has to measure. And I think that
I didn't even mention LeBron. LeBron's on an expiring.
Right. And LeBron, that's one of the, you would ask sort of like dark horse type of storylines. I feel like there's a conversion happening from it being LeBron's team to Luka's team, that there's no like set date on it happening or no set event, but it is sort of a like,
it happened February 1st.
Yeah, probably. Sure. But the actual, like, what does that mean? I guess that's what I'm saying is, what does that look like? What does that mean? We saw Luka recruiting free agents over the course of this summer. The reason I bring that up is because I felt this Lakers team, much like most teams with their superstars, have always sort of followed the energy level on a night-to-night basis of LeBron from I'm going to be up. And you can tell in warm-up sometimes that LeBron's freaking windmilling stuff. All right, it's one of those nights, right? That everybody goes, okay, they get sort of energized by that. And I think it's eminently unfair to ask a guy at his age to be the guy who carries the team energy-wise, that can only be replaced by your best player. And so what does that look like for a Luka that's healthy physically, that's healthy mentally? There's that whole sort of, we're starting from this idea of Luka, it being Luka's team, which was not the case last year, that it provides you just a different foundation to build off of. So I'm just curious what that ends up looking like.
Yeah, I mean, all summer I've been saying and repeating this point that LeBron and Luka were in touch really early in the summer, and and they'd spoken about the ways that they can further maximize this opportunity together. So it was funny while all of the LeBron noise was going on, I just kept on saying I don't think he's going anywhere. But anyway, the LeBron aspect of this and that energy level, it was pretty clear last year, not just from a strategic standpoint. There was the your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, element of LeBron and Luka playing together. And I think there's value in that to a certain extent. I actually liked some of the looks where LeBron was on the weak side while Luka was operating on the strong side, and how the defense just was really reluctant to completely move off of one or the other. But from a locker room standpoint, from a culture standpoint, it felt like it was your turn, my turn in terms of leadership and not wanting to step on toes. And that's going to be something in training camp that's going to be really interesting and really important to pay close attention to as well here. I also really want to quickly hit before we segue over to the second half of this show and we open this thing up to the panel. Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick are set to talk tomorrow or today by the time this actually airs. And it's been really quiet from both of them this summer. JJ Redick didn't I totally anticipated him doing some kind of a sideline interview with ESPN at Summer League. Didn't get that. I don't believe we got that from Rob Pelinka either. From Summer League,
I don't think so.
I think the Lakers as an organization basically skipped the first weekend of in terms of from management standpoint, that first weekend of Summer League. So it's been a very quiet summer from that perspective. Jovan, you're I believe going to be in the building for that presser. What are you anticipating? What are you looking to hear from both of them heading into this presser?
I'd love to hear from JJ what he learned after reflecting over the last few months just on his rookie season, and if there's anything he would do differently or just any newfound perspective on both his coaching style but also his basketball philosophy. And one of the points I've made continually all summer has just been I felt like he had this malleability with the things that he didn't necessarily believe in strongly, but with the things that he strongly believed in, he did not have that same malleability. Yeah. And I think at times it felt like he was coaching for more the roster that he wanted rather than the roster that he had. And that I've made this point before, but he wants to coach the 2024 Celtics. He wants 5 shooters out there who can switch across all 5 positions, and that's not the roster that he has. And so at times he was able to tap into some of those things, especially post Luka. You saw the 3-point rate really skyrocket, and they became, I think, more of a modern, analytically friendly offense, let's say. So I think there are some things maybe offensively that they can do similar to the way that JJ wants to coach. But I think with the switching and how he does the defensive scheme, I don't think they have the personnel to compete with the 2024 Celtics and that versatility and switchability. So I think just some of the things he's learned and maybe some of the things he's grown from and changed his perspective on. And then with Rob, I want some more clarity with this whole Project 2026, Project 2027, future cap space, and getting a better sense of how do they view the long-term future with Luka versus the short-term future, and competing now and not potentially costing a first-round pick or a Dalton Connect or something versus maintaining some of those assets for maybe a Giannis or a Jokic, or even not even necessarily like the big game hunting, but just how you build out your roster in the post-LeBron era. So getting some more clarity there. I feel like that my one thing that I kind of want to push back on is like we've heard this thing with them, I feel like, for years of now they're willing to be aggressive and put the first on the table and this and that, and like it's kind of been hit or miss, right? Like we have the 2022 and 24 deadlines where they did nothing, and we have the 2023 and 25 deadlines where there was some major action and the roster completely turned over. So that I don't like, if that's kind of the talking point, I don't know if I fully buy into that, because I feel like that's the annual thing of they're willing to trade the pick for the right deal, and like that to me is just kind of talking out of the side of your
timing,
mouth.
right? Like the moves had already happened, and they're like, no, yeah, now we're ready to go. It's like, well, hold on. Pete, what are you looking to hear from?
It's funny hearing Jovan say that, because I know what I want to hear from them. I don't know how to ask the question in a way to get the answer that's more than a boilerplate template answer. And I don't know if you have strategies on this, Jovan, to get people to actually give you the answer.
I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it. With Rob, it can be a little tricky.
For sure. And so, yeah, I want to know sort of I think from Rob's perspective, the team is starting to transition from keeping the powder dry, maximize optionality, try to land a superstar like Luka Doncic that they've done all of those things. But I think it's transitioning from that to like, okay, now you have to do something with those options. You have to make a choice and commit to it and go in a certain path that I don't really trust him really or the front office to make the right decisions on that. But I do think that I want to know more about kind of where his head is at in that respect. I love the point on Redick about him sort of digesting that first season. And I would love to hear what we do when the Lakers get new players and all of that. We go, okay, how do you think he fits? How do you think he meshes with all of this? I think from Redick's perspective, remember, he was not hired at the beginning of last offseason. He sort of picked things up right in the middle of an offseason. He's got a full offseason to dream and envision and just like, okay, you got these new ingredients. What do you want to cook? And so I want to hear from Redick, like what he wants to cook. Not any predictions, or doesn't have to beat his chest or anything like that, but just I think we are this. And it's interesting, Jovan, hearing your observation, because that's a point of pride of his, is I coach the team that I have. This is the thing he's explicitly said, rather than the team that I want. And so how much does that match up to the players that he actually has? How much of it is, because it's so funny hearing you come up with that, Jovan, about the 2024 Celtics. I've had the exact same thought in terms of style of play, and the Lakers do not have stylistically even those type of players that, and even we want to bump up our 3-point rate and all that. They were like, what, 12th, 15th with Luka once after we got Luka. Like, it wasn't very good. So after you had all of that time to digest and all of that, what do you dream of? What do you envision? What do you want to hear from him, Anthony?
I don't really have very high expectations going into these things. I think these guys are really good talkers, and they're very good at, saying stuff without saying stuff, or not saying stuff while saying stuff. My thing is, we saw a literal sale of the Lakers over the offseason, and everybody that we're going to be hearing from tomorrow has new bosses, and that's going to be, or at least theoretically at some point this year is going to have new bosses. And I'm really kind of curious if we're going to get a glimpse into what this next iteration of the Lakers is going to look like. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was two key developments this summer that led to some of the reporting that the Lakers are now more interested in pushing chips into the middle of the table. I thought, one, Luka got back out onto a court, and those competitive juices started flowing, and he was like, oh, I am actually top 3 in the world. I don't want to wait. I put all this work in. I want to go out and go. So I thought that was a key development. But then also, we got that report that the Boston Celtics, there was initial reporting that Wyc Grousbeck was going to be able to stay on as their governor and key decision maker and all of that stuff. And the league kind of stepped in and said, no, that's not really how it's going to work. And that's essentially, Mark Cuban has basically said that that's what the league did when he sold the Mavericks as well. And when we got that timing of the report that the Lakers are they saw what they wanted to see from Luka, and it's like, I don't see how him playing against Portugal changes anything in that regard. Like, you should know that Luka's pretty good at basketball. But like I kind of thought I linked that reporting actually more to a transition to how the Dodgers are run, where there are no off years. The Dodgers are every single year, the expectation is win the division, get into the playoffs, make noise in the playoffs, period. And NBA is obviously a very different economy. But what I'm going to be kind of looking for tomorrow, and what I would like to, maybe heard asked about is, hey, there's going to be a transition of power at some point here. Has that already started? And if not, what's that eventually going to look like? Pete, I've heard you kind of talk about this on the pod. You have the most experience, obviously, with the three of us in terms of the internal dynamics of the Lakers. What would you expect to see in that regard?
Yeah, this is such a great point to start from. I'm the thing I'll be listening for is it any different from those previous years, right? That Jovan was saying we kind of hear similar things every year. Does having different bosses at the top sort of change the level of messaging and all of that? And so, yeah, I guess I would like to hear just more of a level of aggression and something that reflects that, like, no, we are not keeping the powder dry anymore. I have no idea what to ask or what he would say to indicate that would be different from previous years. So this might be futile in its own way, but I do think that having different bosses and what does that look like, that's one of the biggest questions just lingering over the Lakers in total is, Jovan, what changes about ownership this year? And that's just a question in general. And then how do you expect Rob and JJ to handle that?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, and I hadn't even thought of that. So I'm glad you guys brought that up, and I think that's something that has to be asked. And I think now that I'm no longer a beat reporter, I'm a bit lower in the pecking order in terms of asking questions. So I used to be like 4th or 5th typically, and now I'll probably be, I don't know, maybe 6th or 7th at best. We'll see how they arrange the question asking. So point being is like, I have like a list of all these questions I want to ask. And then as it goes down the row and each person asks, it's typically like crossing a question off. And so now I'm going to add an ownership question. I assume someone will ask it within the first few, just because it is such a big topic. I typically just think about the basketball stuff, and that's where my mind goes. And how are they going to change things with the system, or what are they looking for in the trade market? But I will say quickly, I do think there's a bit of posturing and just kind of this game of chicken that has been going on a little bit with LA and Miami, that I thought it was interesting that because along with them being open to potentially making a trade or taking on long-term salary, Andrew Wiggins' name was brought up in both of the reports. Yeah. And then Miami, or there was recently a report coming out from the Miami side of they're not looking to trade Andrew Wiggins. That was before the Tyler Hero injury, so I wonder how that plays into all of this, if at all. But I thought it was interesting that like Wiggins specifically was a name that we had heard at times this summer, and it didn't really seem to go anywhere. But then as training camp is about to start and teams are maybe starting to have conversations again with the season nearing, Lakers' perspective of, okay, now we're willing to be more aggressive depending on the price. And then the Miami side, well, we don't want to trade Andrew Wiggins. And like it feels like there's a little bit of chicken going on there.
Yeah. All right. So that is going to do it here for this first half of this Great Western Forum, second episode of the Great Western Forum. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with a panel of us three, Pete's co-host, Darius Soriano, and Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation. So hang tight, hit that subscribe button, all those good buttons, and we will be right back. Welcome back, everybody, here to the Great Western Forum podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined by our full panel now. Unfortunately, we didn't have room for Harrison, so Harrison next time. But we are joined now by Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation and Darius Soriano, Pete's co-host over there at Laker Film Room. Darius, I want to start here with you because I was laughing about this. One could argue none of this would have happened if you wouldn't have answered the 57 emails I sent to you about writing it for Blue and Gold way back in the day. So the onus the onus to me having a platform is all rests on your shoulders, Darius.
My mentions are going to go crazy.
So it's your fault.
But no, thank you very much, Darius, for hopping on here. Trevor, how are you holding up? You ready? I just told the guys in the previous segment, this is the most excited I've been about a Lakers season in a minute.
Oh, I'm always excited about a Lakers season, but I'm especially excited about this upcoming season. I can't wait for them to get back out on the floor. Finally, I'm done with summer. Let's move on. Let's get into actual Lakers basketball. I'm thrilled. I can't wait, especially after we got that appetizer of Eurobasket, seeing how good Luka looked. Oh man, I can't wait to see him out there on the court in purple and gold, the slim version of Luka Doncic out there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That little tease, right? It was like it's like you go out to a nice dinner and the appetizer comes out and then it takes too long for the entree to come out afterward. You're like, damn, if that was the appetizer, I can't wait for the actual thing. In the first segment, we talked a lot about storylines that we're going to be paying attention to heading into training camp. And the main one that I think we spent the most time on was the starting lineup. And, Pete, Jovan, and we were all pretty much aligned on Marcus Smart starting and joining LeBron, Luka, Ayton, and Austin. Darius, without even getting into like who you think should be starting, one question I keep on asking myself, and I think this is a good question to ask you specifically here, because you're a very nuanced guy, is this as big a deal heading into the season, the starting group on opening night? Is it that big of a deal going into it as it has been made to be over the course of the summer?
I would say so, honestly. I know you can always change course, and I know that coaches can tinker and figure some things out as the season goes along, but I would argue that the differences in player archetype between Rui and Smart make it so that you're sort of choosing a pathway very early on with the first decision that you make. If this was a choice between Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt, for example, I would argue this would be less so. But Rui's classically a forward. He's going to have different defensive responsibilities than what Marcus Smart would have. He's not as much of a ball handler. Like, just the difference in roles between what Smart and Rui would provide, I think, shift around what the asks are of Austin and LeBron and Luka on both sides of the ball to a degree. Offensively, not as much, but defensively, I think a ton. So I would say that you're pretty much making up your mind, not fully, but to what type of team you want to be, particularly with your starting five. So I don't want to put it all on, the starting lineup, it can't change still, even whichever direction that JJ decides. But I do think it's a pretty important decision, and it will give us a good indication of like what JJ thinks is the right pathway for the team out of the gate.
Trevor, you had posed this question on Twitter a couple of days ago of who should the fifth starter be, and a lot of the replies were Rui. I think the four of us are certainly aligned on Marcus Smart, but that's certainly not the only train of thought. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I'm in line with you guys. I am on the side of Marcus Smart. I think that he makes the most sense, particularly because I think there's a misconception with Luka Doncic. We tend to put him as a guard, and I tend to not want to focus on players in terms of what they do on the offensive end when we're trying to slot them into a position. It's more about who they're actually going to defend. Amen. And I think it's a mistake to look at Luka Doncic as a guard. He's going to do most of his time spending guys that are more out there on the wing defensively. So I do think you need another guard out there on the floor along with Austin Reaves to be that defensive piece, and that does make sense with it being Marcus Smart. It's a little bit tough because did Rui really do anything to necessarily lose that starting job? Not really. He did what he was being asked to do, 50% from the field plus 40% from three, 2 seasons in a row, knock down open shots, does those things. But in terms of overall fit with that starting lineup, I do think that Marcus Smart is probably the way to go. There will be people that will tell you that Smart should be starting in place of Reaves. I see that a much less likely substitution than Rui Hachimura. But I think the other piece to all of this that we have to remember, whether it's Austin Reaves or Rui Hachimura, both guys heading into a contract year. So beyond just this mattering for the team conceptually and what they're going to be focusing on, what JJ Redick is going to be focusing on in terms of charting that path forward, this is going to matter a lot for those guys too, for Rui, for Austin, for all these other guys on this team that are essentially on expiring contracts, Marcus Smart as well, DeAndre Ayton, a number of other guys, heck, LeBron James, right? These decisions are going to matter not just for the team, but for the financial futures of these players too. And so that's going to be an undercurrent that we're going to have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I want to talk about Austin because essentially if it isn't Marcus Smart, it's Rui. Or another pervasive response has been just bring Austin off of the bench. He makes the most sense. He can run the second unit offense, yada, yada, yada. And Jovan, one thing that I've kind of felt myself fighting back against over the course of this offseason has been the difference in delineation between Austin was sometimes asked to do too much and Austin is overrated, you know, and that's where I think that's where the sentiment of Austin moving to the bench kind of comes from. Have you felt that in your kind of experience this summer as well?
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if I'm taking crazy pills or something, because I feel like the Austin discourse has been quite ridiculous. Like, he was one of, I believe, only 12 players last year to average 24 and 5, including the other two star Lakers in Luka and LeBron. And I just think this guy's way too good to be coming off of the bench. And the point I made earlier in the show is if the Lakers had a Danny Green or KCP, or even, like, to modernize it, like a Herb Jones type on this roster, I think you could potentially sell me on Austin as the sixth man and staggering him and Luka more and having him run the second unit. But I think from a talent perspective, if you are moving Austin to the bench and reducing his minutes, because I think that's the other part of this is, like, I do think whoever comes off the bench more as a sixth man, like, there is a role reduction to an extent. So I think if Austin's starting, he's probably more in that 34, 35 minute range, which he was at in the post Luka trade era. If he's coming off the bench, it's hard to get Austin above 28, maybe 30 minutes tops. So you are not only moving Austin to the bench, but you are marginalizing your third best player. And I don't think this team has the requisite talent or skill or depth to offset that. Like, I think if you are putting a Marcus Smart or a Rui or a Vando or a Gabe, I just think those guys are all worse players than Austin. And I don't even think it's particularly close, to be completely honest. So I know he has his flaws, and I know there is overlap with Austin and Luka, but I also think there's been like a mischaracterization about that partnership. There are +8 points per 100 possession on the floor with those two together, +20 when LeBron was off the floor. So if anything, I think it's like some of the other legs of the big three that they got to figure out. Like, the Luka Austin partnership worked. We've seen Luka work with Jalen Brunson and Kyrie Irving. Not to say Austin's on that level, but I think he can do some of the things that those guys did. And I think he's bigger and better defensively than either Kyrie or Jalen Brunson. So I think there is a path here to this being a long-term partnership and this working. I would like to see it over the course of an 82-game season. And if Austin struggles next to Luka and it doesn't work, then I will change my tune later in the season. But for now, I think it worked last year. I don't think this is the reason why the Lakers lost in round one. He did not have a good series, but I also think even that has been a little overblown as to how much he struggled against Minnesota. He was also dealing with an injury. So I think that the Austin discourse has just completely gone off the rails.
Can I say I love Marcus Smart as a backcourt partner for Austin? He's very close to what I would like next to him. I think the type of guys that Smart can't really guard as much anymore. Jovan was saying in the first segment about those speedsters that's what Austin does best on the defensive end, is as a chaser, as a guy who can be a help defender, but can really be your main perimeter guy. That doesn't mean he's going to win a foot race with De'Aaron Fox or anything like that. But I do think that physical, because the ways teams can attack Trevor Austin is to go right at his chest type of thing, that if it's D'Angelo Russell next to him, as we were at this time last season, that's kind of a shared weakness, right? And so I really like that combination. What do you think about that duo?
I do like that. I think there is a natural synergy with Marcus Smart and Austin Reaves together. I think Luka has talked about learning a little bit defensively from Marcus Smart. He had that comment earlier in the season. I think there will be that natural growth by putting a guy like Austin, who occasionally you can see get caught out of position defensively. Marcus Smart can be a stabilizer in that sense, but also just giving you that guy that's got that more physical presence defensively next to Austin. I think that he is a really, really good fit together in that backcourt. I do have a little bit of concern when we talk about, Rui Hachimura, not a great rebounder, but a better rebounder than Marcus Smart. There is some, it's going to put a lot if you do go to that Smart and Austin backcourt with Luka, LeBron, and Ayton. And Luka can certainly rebound. LeBron can rebound. Ayton can rebound, but it's going to put a lot on those guys to really rebound the basketball. Maybe an area of weakness last season for the Lakers. So you do take a little bit of a step back there. But overall, in terms of your perimeter defense, I like having a guy like Marcus Smart next to Austin. It's the same conversation we were having with D'Angelo Russell and Austin as a duo together. So I think it would be a positive move to go in that direction with Smart for all the reasons you listed and more.
Darius, go ahead.
Can I just add too, just really quickly, that the rebounding point, I would say that the Lakers are much better positioned to be a good rebounding team with Ayton, LeBron, Luka, and even Austin in the mix there. And so that's not to say that Rui as a forward is not a better rebounder than these guards that we're talking about. But from a positional standpoint, I would argue that Austin's probably a better positional rebounder from the guard spot than Rui is from the forward spot. And I like playing physical guards or bigger guards in general. Smart's not necessarily tall, but he is stout and strong.
He's a fire hydrant. Yeah.
And he's going to be physical. He's going to box out. He's going to crash down and sandwich some. And it's going to be helpful, I think, for the team rebounding environment in general. And so I'm with Pete and everyone here. Really, I do see a natural synergy between Smart and Austin. And I'd love to see them get minutes together, even outside of the starting group.
Yeah. One point, Pete, that you have made over the course of the summer that I loved was how unique it is that the Lakers have basically an elite engine for the offense on the court at all times, basically, and then sometimes multiple elite engines between Luka and LeBron. I think you could kind of sort of do the same thing as far as attack dogs defensively, where if you start Marcus Smart, you can have him sub out, and then Jared Vanderbilt can come into the game, and he can kind of run around and be the Tasmanian devil, in those lineups as well. If you don't start Smart, now you're talking about trying to mathematically make that work defensively too with those two guys, and I think that gets kind of tricky. What do you think about that defensive approach?
Yeah, I think that one of the things, we can always start on the starters and not go past that. But if you have a starting lineup that you like, you can also have a secondary effect of, but this leads me to, with 3 minutes left in the first quarter, I've got Marcus Smart and Vando on the floor at the same time. And last year it's also Trey Jemison and Luka. Good luck, sir. Make it happen. Score us some points, right? And so the way that you can kind of
start eating.
Yeah. So like mapping out balanced lineups, not just for the first 6 minutes of each half, but throughout I'm very much aligned with that I think that that's another knockoff effect of starting Smart instead of Rui, is I think you can have more balance.
Darius, I want to go back to the point that you made. You honestly kind of surprised me with the notion of how important it is to get this starting gig or starting group right from the get-go. I agree with you 100%. That if you don't, now all of a sudden you're playing from behind, and the Lakers' schedule kind of broke for them in a sense that like they can start the season with some real positive momentum. And if you do kind of hammer out your culture and your identity by nailing this starting group right from the get-go, that does present you a real opportunity. In a season, by the way, where, the front office is still debating, to what extent they're going to go all in and what that would even look like and stuff like that. With this starting group and this training camp and stuff, are there any kind of storylines or reporting or headlines that could come from this that you were kind of specifically looking for that would help get the Lakers off to the kind of start that I think we all agree they need to get off to, given the way that the schedule is starting?
Well, Pete has brought this up a couple of times on the LFR pod, but discussing the 2020 team that ended up winning the championship and how important the defensive culture that was set at the beginning with Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee sort of being this huge paint presence, but then Avery Bradley really setting the tone defensively at the point of attack. And Pete brought up that Avery Bradley challenge that would exist in training camp and in practices, where he was really pressuring guards and really making it difficult on his own teammates. And I think improving the culture and helping everyone get better in this way. If we're looking for like a micro storyline in relation to the starting lineup, I'm very interested to see if a player like Marcus Smart and to a certain degree Jared Vanderbilt and even Adu Thiero, what defensive intensity on the perimeter looks like early in training camp and helping to establish an identity for the team where let's be honest, I think almost everyone that I've talked to and heard talk about the Lakers envision their pathway to success being on the offensive side of the ball. And can they be a top five offense, a top 3 offense? Can they be the best offense in the league? But if they're truly going to contend for a championship, yeah, there's a formula where they can be second on offense and 12th or 14th or 15th on defense and make a deep run in the playoffs. I find it very difficult to envision them winning a championship with essentially a league average defense. And I think that if they're going to surprise on that end of the floor, it's going to start early in camp. It's going to start with ideas like, hey, Marcus Smart's in the best shape that he's been in 3 seasons, or he looks healthier than he's been in multiple seasons. And I think that it's these sorts of ideas where early on in camp, I'm looking for reporting around like defensive intensity and what the team looks like on that side of the ball. Cause I think all of our minds go to JJ Redick offense. But I thought one of the things that he did best last season was try to find defensive solutions for a team that was challenged on that side of the ball. And I could argue that offensively, maybe I would have liked to have seen more creativity and have them make more inroads on that side of the ball than they did, considering the talent that they had. So for me, an early camp storyline that I'd be very interested in hearing positive things about is where they are defensively.
Jovan, I'm struck. We are now about 50 minutes into this training camp preview thing, and we've hardly mentioned LeBron at all. It's been a lot of Luka. It's been a lot of JJ. It's been what are you kind of looking for? Like the thought crossed my mind. I don't think this is actually going to happen. It's like a 0.00001% chance. But like media day, LeBron kind of pulls everybody aside and is like, all right, this is going to be it. Like, but at the end of the day, though, he is so used to being the center of the universe, and this is going to be the first full season where that isn't going to be the case organizationally. What are you kind of looking for, expecting from LeBron?
I'm interested, just like everybody else, about what he has to say about his basketball future and maybe clarifying the statement that was released after he opted in. I think there was kind of like they released a statement, there was the reaction, and then there was sort of it felt like on their end, like, why is everybody talking about this? Like we opted in, like there's nothing to really talk about. And it's like, well, people don't typically release these types of statements when they you didn't have to release a statement, right? So that was a choice. So I would like to know, like, kind of where his mind is at with the roster and the changes. Obviously, going back, like he wasn't really active in terms of recruiting guys, or at least that was the reporting or some of the comments that were made around the time, even directly asking players, hey, did LeBron reach out to you? Did he try to pitch you on joining the team? And everyone to a man said no. So he did take the one picture with everybody at Summer League, but like, I'd like to know just where he's at mentally with this roster, how competitive he thinks they can actually be, some of the communication with Luka this summer, and what they talked about, and what their vision is for what this team could be this season. So I would like to just get more clarity from LeBron. I don't know how much clarity we're actually going to get on media day, but if LeBron wants more attention or to be in the discourse more, he will say some things that will inevitably lead to him being in the discourse. So I do expect it to be an eventful media day on Monday.
It's going to be so interesting. It's just, Harrison has made the point that the only child thing with LeBron, where it's just sometimes he's just not used to not being the center of everybody's attention. And part of that is because he's been so freaking good at basketball for so long that he's had to be the center of everybody's attention. Trevor, I'm going to lean on, Lakers Nation has the biggest and loudest comment sections of any of our platforms here. And this is where I've been struck by the conversation about Austin, and I've been struck by the conversation about LeBron this summer. And with LeBron, it's been so weird to have Lakers fans, so many of them, say like, oh, you didn't take a pay cut. We found out, by the way, that it's probably for the best that he didn't take a pay cut based on what's going on with the Clippers. But like, you didn't take a pay cut and you opted in and you made this comment and you did all this stuff. Stop whining. You've been asking for this, that, and the other. You wanted Russell Westbrook. I've been struck by how many Lakers fans have been basically kind of sort of done with LeBron. And I don't get it. He's coming off of an incredible season and he's going to be really, really good this year, I think. But what have you kind of experienced there with LeBron James and his future with the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly has been some of that. I think that undercurrent has always been there with LeBron and with the Lakers. There is that segment, and I'm not saying it's a huge segment, but there has been that segment of Lakers fans that you never really got past that whole like Kobe versus LeBron thing. Even when LeBron signed with the Lakers, that never really completely dissipated the way we maybe expected it to. So, and as polarizing as LeBron can be, he's always going to have his detractors. And if there's an opportunity where they can jump in and say something negative about him, they will. In terms of building out a roster, in terms of is he worth his salary? I keep going back to 6th in MVP voting, second team All NBA. I think he's at worst one of the top 10 players in the league. If you ask just about anybody, even the most ardent LeBron detractor will say that he's at worst top 15 in the league, right? Even if we're saying he got a little bit of a longevity bump or something in getting second team All NBA. He is a phenomenal player. And if this guy is not worth a max contract, who is, right? If somebody's producing at the level that he is. But I have seen a little bit of that, a little bit of the LeBron was kind of running the show type of feel from Lakers fans. And the Lakers now have kind of moved on to Luka and they're building around him. And there has been that push to kind of move on from LeBron James. I'm in agreement with you though, Anthony. I don't understand it. The man brought a championship to LA. He's been an absolutely phenomenal player. He's an all-time great. Maybe he's the greatest. I don't particularly care whether you want to call him the greatest or the second greatest or whatever. Was certainly one of the greatest to ever play. His jersey is getting retired. No question. I don't know about the whole statue conversation or whatever, but he is still producing at an incredible, incredible level. And I think that he does have a lot of haters out there, and those are people that are going to kind of jump on these opportunities that they see to be loud and be vocal about that. But there wasn't a whole lot that I saw last season on the basketball court to suggest that the Lakers need to be in any hurry to move on from LeBron James. He is absolutely one of the best players in the world. And I think one of the critical things for the Lakers this season, not just having a player with the talent of LeBron James on this team, it's having a player with the versatility of LeBron James on this team that is going to make or break their season, because he can do anything that you need him to do. He can fill in any role, and that is going to be incredibly important for the Lakers. So sometimes we fall prey to negativity during the offseason. There has been a little bit of that for sure, but in general, I think it's overblown. I think LeBron James is an incredible player, and my genuine hope is that when it's all said and done, whether it's a year from now, whether it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't know how long he's going to play. Whenever it is, I'd like to see him play his final game in a Lakers jersey.
Amen to that. And to zero in on your versatility point, Trevor, I would argue this team is more conducive to LeBron's versatility than any other, in that there is no job that he has to do on this team, and the Lakers don't have anybody else who can also do that job. So he can move between worlds. Sometimes he looks like Karl Malone rolling to the basket as a big man. Sometimes he's our best shooter coming off of the fades on the perimeter. Sometimes he's our best point guard. I love against the Warriors. He's a great point guard threat because he's so powerful that he can really get their smaller ball handlers in the sidecars, Darius always says, and leverage that. And I've felt in years past that he was needed as that on-ball threat to such an extent that there were a lot of lineups where he wasn't free to be whatever he wanted to be on that particular night, and including that point guard. And so, D, that's something that you and I have talked about on the pod. And one thing that you've brought up is that this doesn't have to be this sour sort of, oh, LeBron's got to play through it. He's got an opportunity with this team to have it be a really great season.
He does, and he has the opportunity to flex his versatility in whatever ways that he wants. I think one of the things that we should have a conversation about is how that actually looks practically on the court, and the decision making that's going to come from LeBron on a night-to-night basis or even a play-to-play basis on what hat he is going to wear. To Anthony's point earlier with like the only child stuff or how much attention, some of that is rightfully so coming from the perspective of, no, he's actually the best player on the team. He's going to get the ball every single time. And the entirety of the team's offensive approach for sure is going to flow through what LeBron does best. The only time that was even somewhat in question was with the Heat, right? Because they had another real dominant player with Wade, who had already won a title. But the oscillating and the shape-shifting discussion around LeBron is super interesting to me, because it's going to require a certain amount of investment from him on really reading how he's going to react from a possession-to-possession basis, and when to take over and when to cede possessions to Luka or even possessions to Austin, deciding that actually, no, what's best for the team tonight is that I be in the post more often, but is that actually what he wants to do on that specific night? And so one of the things, and I expect this to go well, so don't get me wrong, but there can sometimes be a dissonance between players who are ultra talented in deciding like, no, actually what I want to do tonight is this, and this is how I want to attack tonight. And if the game calls for something else, well, well, like, I'm a great player and I'm going to shift the game in my direction. Again, I don't think LeBron has been guilty of this too often during his entire career, to say nothing of his Lakers career. But I will say there were possessions at times with Anthony Davis and LeBron where I thought, hey, maybe it's time to get AD a touch, but instead it's LeBron at the top of the floor and AD is in the corner and they're not even running pick and roll. And so to move that forward to an age 41 season, and he's 23 years deep, and there's Luka Doncic, and here's Austin Reaves, and here is DeAndre Ayton, like feeling all of that stuff out. I just don't want to act as though it's just a given that things are going to go smoothly as well. And I think that speaks to Jovan's point from earlier. Some of the on-off numbers or two-player, three-man lineup group stuff between Luka, LeBron, and Austin, I think that shoring up that partnership between LeBron and Luka is still something that out of training camp, to a point that you were making earlier, Anthony, is like, that's an early cap storyline as well, is like, what does the synergy look like in two-man game or in three-man action?
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm going to be bugging people about the most from afar. What's the offense look like with Luka and LeBron? Are they running anything? Are they, is there anything, Pete, that you're expecting? And like, do you think we'll get any clarity on the Luka LeBron tandem early, or do you think that's more of a slow cook?
I think that's going to be more of a slow cook. You'd mentioned earlier, I liked some of the things that they're doing. I think there's a good argument to have, rather than them together on one side of the floor, them spread out a little bit. That said, I do think that having your two best players on one side of the floor and you three go over, stand on the other side and knock down an open shot if you get open is one of the oldest basketball frameworks of all time, that they do need to establish a two-man game between the two of them. That said, though, like, there's going to be a lot of switching to that. I don't know. They have to get there. I don't think the answers are as obvious because of sort of the overlap as two jumbo initiators. I know Raj was saying the other day, like, I couldn't find any possessions with LeBron as the role man, right? We saw it at Eurobasket, but I couldn't really find it as that. And so, and this is part of what I'm excited to hear from Redick, both tomorrow and over the course of training camp and all of that. Just where's his mind been in terms of imagining, okay, what could I do with LeBron and Luka? Because at the end of the day, you do have to have some version of your offense where it's like, we're going to go through our two best guys and make it happen.
Yeah, I want to end on the Redick Rob presser that we're about to get tomorrow. And Trevor, I'll start here with you on this one. We've kind of talked about some of the things that we would like to hear from Rob and from JJ about, JJ's offseason and this notion of whether or not the Lakers are going all in this year, and the late offseason switch from, well, we're kind of planning ahead for 2026 to no, actually, we are interested in potentially moving chips into the middle of the table. At this point, I think we've all covered a Rob Pelinka team for plenty of time at this point, and we also know that JJ Redick is very adept at media, right? That's part of the reason that he has the job that he has. Is there anything that you think is realistic to expect from tomorrow's press conference?
Like you said, JJ is very adept at winning press conferences. We know that's something that's been important to the Lakers. My hope is that we do get some kind of a parable from Rob. That would obviously always be a welcome
optionality. Every time you hear optionality.
I would love to get something along those lines. But no, what I really want to find out, because we haven't heard much from JJ this summer. I really want to find out, now that JJ's had an opportunity to really marinate on the idea of this is a team with Luka on it, with LeBron on it. What are some of his initial concepts? Because this is, Rob used the analogy of we're building the plane while it's in the air. Suddenly, hey, February, boom, guess what? Hey, Luka's on your team. That's a very difficult thing for any coach to navigate mid-season like that, let alone a first-year head coach. So
that was the second iteration of the team. There was already a shift in identity before Luka got it.
Yeah, exactly. That's insanely difficult to have to grapple with. So what does JJ conceptually think about this team? And I'm not expecting him to lay out all of his plans. Obviously, he's not going to do that. But I want to get whatever glimpses we can into what his initial thoughts are in terms of getting Luka and LeBron on the same page. How do you maximize both of them? What is that going to look like? I am hoping that we get just a peek into what JJ's thoughts are now that he's had a whole summer. I'm imagining that JJ has been locked in his basement all summer, just looking at film and everything. I want to know, what is that all turn into at this point? I'm hoping we get some glimpses of that.
Yeah, I want a big picture. What is this team going to be?
Yeah.
What do you want this team to be?
Yeah. I mean, seeing as he, according to Rob Pelinka, spontaneously combusted into strategic creativity when they drafted Dalton, right? You would think that, all right, now you have this opportunity with LeBron and Luka. Darius, what are you kind of expecting from the presser there and from Rob and JJ? One of the things that we talked about at the end of the first segment was this thing, the sale hanging over the organization here moving forward, and the potential implications of that whenever it is finalized as well. Is there anything on that front that you're paying, extra close attention to?
I'd be interested to hear if they're going to comment at all about that until it's finalized. If they do comment, then I would love to hear how they envision, or what their ask would be around how they can best leverage the new resources potentially that are available to them. But beyond that, I don't necessarily expect Rob and JJ to dive too much into that. The North Star of the organization doesn't necessarily change with an ownership sale like this. The Lakers have always tried to position themselves as a team that's in the hunt for a championship, and if they're not directly in the hunt, then building towards that idea and really seeking that out. I would imagine that the new ownership is going to hold that exact same mentality as well. So I don't know if they're going to have anything to say in that regard. We were talking on the LFR pod earlier about hearing JJ now, as Trevor was alluding to, after an entire summer off, just reflecting on what last season was like and how it ended, and in many ways what was a disappointment. They were the 3 seed, they were favored. There were folks who envisioned a real pathway for them to get to the Western Conference Finals with the roster that they had. And I think that there was a lot of excitement around this idea of the Lakers got to the 3 seed mainly on the strength that they had all these tiebreakers from winning a lot of important games against some of the better teams in the conference. And so I know I was okay, let's get to it. And one of the reasons why it was a long off season and we're all oh my God, is it over yet? Is because after 5 playoff games, their season was over. And it's like, wait, it's not even May yet or whatever it is. And now we've got a whole offseason still. And so a certain amount of reflection from JJ about what he's learned and how he's going to apply that to this year would be nice to hear as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm always looking for any sort of like nugget that we can get about like what tactics are going to look like, what schemes are going to look like. Are they going to do more 4-out stuff versus 5-out stuff? Are they still going to incorporate some of the horns and 3-man action stuff that they ran last year? Like, I'll slot that stuff up. So like, if he wants to go in that route for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever on Thursday, great. But I'd love to get more big picture stuff from him, because we hear from the head coach all of the time. Like, he's going to have media availability after every practice or whatever. So we're going to get a lot of JJ Redick. So big picture stuff. And from, if there is tactical stuff, like the tactical vision for how he thinks this team can be great on both sides of the ball, is something that I'd love to hear from JJ specifically.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a real blast once again. Legit honored to be a part of this panel here. I think everybody's going to be really excited to hear our voices together and continue doing these things. As always, you guys can follow Trevor on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, and you can find his work at Lakers Nation. Obviously, Darius, the blog father, at Forum Blue and Gold, and then LFR Pod, which he hosts with Pete. Jovan with Buha's block has been excellent. Jovan, I think you're coming up on 30,000 subs heading into hopefully the season.
Let's go.
Yeah. Let's get all the way there. Let's get you across that finish line, and then you can follow my stuff at Anthony Irwin LA and on the Lakers Lounge. So until the next time we all get together, which will be next month when we are previewing the season in full. Have a great rest of your evenings and days and all of that good stuff, and we will talk to you soon.